Wait. Okay. Hold on.
My hammer sings on your return. I forge more than horseshoes and nails. What do you need?
Hold on. Feedback document. The plain overpower temper and blood overpower temper are the same value. Following logic of niche equals more better, the blood overpower temper should be 20 to 30% higher at a minimum, and a generic overpower roll. Overpower should be stronger than critical, except that there are builds that can overpower all the time, so it's actually not more niche. I think that those builds should enjoy the benefit of having solved that, as opposed to builds that can't do it not receiving anything. But I just got really excited because we're actually doing ultimate skill damage. And they're saying that crit should be equal to ultimate. The fact that ultimate additive damage is the same as overpower or crit is actually kind of ludicrous to me. What would I consider a good benchmark? Tier 100 for sure. 101 if you're nasty, but
Shame that. Hello, not a bad pull that. Hello, shining beauty. Hello, shining beauty. Well, there's something special. Not a bad pull that.
Um, so I think this is the alternative to the shadow damage over time version, for sure. The other thing being that it more naturally builds into Lucien's helmet. And shadow damage over time was just absolutely just annihilated. So let's update the planner. I haven't gotten any of the new uniques, but they are... The Helm of Lucien will be used on every single build in this video game. Alright, let's update the build planner. Technically speaking, it should actually be ultimate damage because this has 100% uptime and you might screw up and not overpower. Technically speaking. I think I'm gonna go with Blight size. Transfer to cast twice. Transfer to cast twice, sure. For chance, I'm at 69. Technically speaking, this would be better. Also, Royal Diamonds need to, like, ultimate additive damage should be the highest additive damage stat in the game, I think. Would you rather have... Shaco has 20 DR. Yeah, Lucian says multiply your damage by 125% multiplier, which is just... like, it's nearly a number that has never been seen outside of Blighted aspect, which got just nerfed into the ground. Like it is unfair. Okay. So I think that this is like the end game version of it, where you actually can have like perfect stuff. Rest in peace dot version. Clone this set. Stopgap OP setup. Let's do stopgap OP setup. Well, how much total essence am I getting up to? 108. Excuse me. Actually, let's also do this, damn it. Let's do this math, right? Let's do this math. Damage. Damned. Title 1. Title 2. So with Damned as a 1.5. Title on the amulet being a 0.77. And then this one this multiplied by 0.77. Call this 1,000 damage. Total damage ends up being this times this plus this times this times that plus dealing less damage than the previous. Versus Right. So title on the amulet ends up being more damage. Okay. I really want to try out Rackonauts. Shremos, the planners are all out. They're in my Discord, !Discord. What's going on, Walker? Minions absolutely do damage. They're not dead. You have a pair of Rackonauts? Bigger step. Lokrin. Max Essence. Max Essence. Sacrifice. We don't need that. I need title. And then the question is, does Lokrins makes it into the end game. Absolutely. Right, it's just better than Grasping Veins. Right? It's just straight up better. Where'd you get Lokrins again? I got mine at the end of the quest. Mayfield, Dangerous Pig, Renard, Serial, Capo Plays, thank you for the follows. Size matters indeed. Thank you for redeeming the darkness. The darkness has been redeemed. Hopefully the darkness will stay redeemed. Oh, I need to take out this. I just don't like Blight, I don't think. Because Corpse Tendrils is so much better for clearing. The auto curse area is so meh, it's so tiny. It says auto cast both your curses for you that also automatically spread for free without having them on your skill bar. It can't just It can't just be it like fully automates a whole system and increases your power and damage output and also hits the whole screen. That would probably be too good. Yeah, Spirit uses Banished Lords. I do think that Curse Size Temper should work with it, though. Are there any plans? There are not, Johnny. Flicker Step will play awkward. It didn't play awkward. I don't update planners unless I've tested stuff. But luckily it did not play awkward. You also have Corpse Tendrils for putting everything in one spot. Okay, so Shadow Surfer is updated. It basically replaces the functionality of the damage over time version, which sadly got nerfed to 30% of its base damage. And I think anything you would do to improve that build's damage output, you would just do to this. Also, I think this should just be control. Also, this should just be amplify, I guess. Just to avoid any issues that you might run into with like... Oh my god, Bone Prison has been turning off sacrificial. Oh, good job, me. Good job, me. Good job, me. Good job, me. Just losing a 1.1. Good job, me. Would you be able to include the grandfather in this build? No, not typically. Grandfather says gain a 2 times multi. This right here says gain 2 1.5 times multis. So it's stronger than grandfather by 25%. No, grandfather is not 200 times multiplier. It doesn't triple your damage. That was a weird misread from Datamine. At least for right now. You can go look at them in game and create them right now, and they're not 200% multi. Resummon Beast in the Ice multiple times now? I'm not sure. I think there's an issue in the known bugs. You can play with Gorquills? You could, and you could reduce your damage output, and I don't think it's for any like measurable embetterment of the build in a reasonable way. Any thoughts on doing Decompose? Not right now. Decompose doesn't benefit from the vast majority of things that like benefit basic skill builds. Most notably, you can't increase its attack speed. You'd also have to fit Bloodlance on, which I guess you can do with the curse, but then it kind of goes against the auto curse being able to get in there while you're just dashing through stuff. I appreciate that, Yama. Yeah. $1 million. So the only thing to consider, Walker, is that there's also damage reduction on monsters. All right, so this is where it needs to be, I think, right now. We are on to testing the next stupid thing. You know what? Well, here's what we'll do. I do need to get a run of this. Let's get a run of this. I have to remember that I have Flicker Step on. The orange numbers are pretty decent. Not good enough, but they're pretty decent. We are walking into blood orbs. Yeah.
I need more time. I need more time. I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I need more time.
Cool, man. Am I gonna have to backtrack? Sure am. Cool, got to the end of a hallway. That's sick. I don't know what happened to progression, but we do need to revert that. How much max life do I have? 35k right now.
I need more time.
Am I looking to get that number on the character sheet 200%, or do other sources fact in as well? Inspiring Leader doesn't show up. Your bone critical strike chance from your Paragon board also does not show up in your character sheet. Yeah, and your Serration bonus doesn't show up. When you're doing the math for critical strike chance on a Necromancer, you always gotta basically go do it yourself for bone builds. Like, this ain't it, boss. Orbs already trigger Rathmas every time I pick one up.
I'm not ready yet. I need more time.
How can proc overpower so much? It's a passive. Yep. When you pick up a blood orb that heals you for your base life, you reduce the cooldown of Rathmas by 2 seconds. It does have decent damage, yeah. Oh, I'm gonna die here. Oh, Ripper Dipper. Bloodlord might have been the worst example. Oh, thank Christ. What? Dungeon clear, blood wave. Then I just need to go find me killing the other boss. Video producer. Highlight. Where are we right now? Okay, OP, blood, wave, boss kill. Okay, so we have that. Now let's do the recording. Okay. What killed me? I don't know. I assumed there was a blood orb I couldn't see. Is an aspect of... Well, Blood Artisan's Cuirass won't overpower Zespar. Yeah, but the tornadoes weren't near me. They went below me. And I don't know why it exploded, and I don't know why it hit me. When does the new season come? Yells John Cena into trade channel. Really use your help on your Incinerate Sork. I've gone to the training dummies naked and watched you doing how to calculate damage. Even without any, my gear is still doing much less damage than what Excel says it should be doing. Monsters have an innate damage reduction. But I don't have time for people to stream their individual builds and receive like one-on-one training from me, Tommy. I don't even have time to make videos for the content that I record, sadly. Thinking the bone spirit damage will be supplemental. We don't scale it in any way, shape, or form, and when you do it without scaling it, it comes out to be like 10, 20 million damage tops. Definitely, like, live your best dreams. I don't think it'll do well. What damage reduction do dummies have? I don't know that number. It's a significant amount, though. Like, the base damage of my bone spirit without any of its multipliers ends up being like 5,000 damage against a test dummy, and then it fully multiplied by all my multipliers ends up being like 2.5 million. So take 5,000 divided by 2.5 million. That's how much damage reduction they have. Something like that. That's not how that number would work. Take 5,000 divided by the base damage of the skill, which would be like 150,000. So we're taking like 5 to 8% damage, something like that. I don't remember.
I'm going to let you pray for me tonight. You shall die exquisitely.
So when you calculate things in Excel, like for your damage over time video, yes, that's based off the damage number that I'm seeing, not the one that I've calculated my skill should be doing based off of numbers in the game. That is, I hit the target, I see what that damage number is. It doesn't matter like what any of the rest of my stuff says unless that's relevant to what I'm calculating. That's the damage that I'm doing, and then you can modify that with additive and multipliers, etc. So like, I hit this target, I did 50 million damage. I don't care what this says my damage is, unless I'm changing what this number is. This skill is doing 50 million damage. Okay, what happens when I add on 100 additive damage when I didn't have any? It should double my damage. Did it double my damage? It did double my damage. Okay, additive damage is working as intended. Do I ever think about eating mushrooms and playing Diablo? I have never thought of that, no. Hallucinogenics and technology don't typically work well together for people. Innate damage reduction is 76% at level 100. There you go. Okay. I don't know why I just ate those nuts. I'm about to do a recording. With the cap to the Wither node, the fix of the bug that was causing damage over time to double dip, and in general, the absolute destruction of the blighted aspect for the Necromancer, damage over time builds are in a very sorry state. My calculations putting them at losing somewhere around 70% of their expected damage has held true in PTR testing. Now, while every single build is not dead in the water, one of the ones most negatively impacted by this was one of my personal favorite builds, which was the Shadow Surfer Necromancer. But if you remember my video where I basically said like, hey, they gutted every single Necro build, I added on a new build to the list of possible things that you could do on the Necromancer. And it was the concept of an overpower Bloodwave build. Something that you could do in the past, it was just absolutely dog water terrible. Because Bloodwave, the skill, even though it has a ton of cool and interesting interactions with various aspects, basically able to completely reset its cooldown and the ability to effectively make it overpower 100% of the time, since it naturally synergizes with Rathma's Vigor that says when you pick up a Blood Orb, reset its cooldown, and you pick up a lot of Blood Orbs with Blood Wave. The issue of it was that its base scaling was 150% damage. Well, they tripled that to 450% damage, making it the largest damage scaling skill that the Necromancer has available to it other than Bone Spirit. And that begged the question, what can you do if you can overpower 100% of the time on Blood Wave, and how much damage can you output? Not only that, but is there anything that we can do to Blood Wave to tap into a bunch of multipliers? Because historically speaking, while blood skills are very cool and being able to overpower 100% of the time is also very cool, blood skills sadly are lacking any powerful or major damage multiplication aspects in the game as it currently stands. While this now is an overpowering instantaneous damage build, meaning that you can also scale crit as well as vulnerable, gaining access to a 1.5, a 1.5, and a 1.2 multiplier, those are things that are available to the vast majority of instantaneous damage skills. No, we needed to find a way to add on even more damage multiplication, and that's through the inclusion of an aspect that you probably thought would have been removed from the build immediately. Ultimate Shadow is what empowered Shadow Surfer in the first place. This aspect added on a ton of damage over time to Blood Wave's skill, and as opposed to the Blood Wave doing this damage, it added on the Desecrated Ground effect, which does damage over time. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Blood Wave, like scaling blood damage doesn't increase it, scaling ultimate damage doesn't increase it. But why would it show up on this build if it doesn't really interact with the skill at all? Well, it's actually the first line of the aspect that makes this so important and pivotal to being able to scale its damage effectively. Bone Storm and Blood Wave are now also darkness skills, and they deal shadow damage. So reading my Blood Wave skill tag, you'll see that it has ultimate, blood, and darkness, and its damage type at the bottom is now shadow. What happens when you take a blood skill that can overpower because it's still a blood skill, still interacts with Rathma's Vigor, but now make it do darkness skill tag in shadow damage? First off, you gain access to Damned, something that says that the moment that you curse a target, or you're using the auto curse aura aspect that they've added to the game, and gain an additional 50% shadow damage against the target. Blood Wave now does shadow damage. You also gain access to the sacrificial aspect. Why is that one so important? Well, it turns out that sacrificing your Reapers gain you a 20% shadow damage bonus. Sacrificial bumps that up to a 30%. And then Memento Mori in your skill. And then the passive Memento Mori will add on another 60% damage multiplier here, meaning that we can benefit from the Shadow multiplier from our warriors, we can benefit from the Overpower multiplier from our mages, and we can benefit from the Critical Strike damage multiplier from our Iron Golem. It goes even further. Gloom says that you gain 18% additional shadow damage to targets that you've hit with your darkness skills. So the Desecrated Ground is doing consistent shadow damage here, but the Blood Wave itself is a darkness skill doing shadow damage. And then on top of that, applying a slow, something that Blood Wave does naturally, is going to add on an additional 9% shadow damage. And then on top of that, once they're stunned, immobilized, or frozen from the New Tempers, or stunned from Corpse Tendrils, or whenever a boss is staggered, that's another 9% damage multiplier. Add on things like Scourge that say when a target is dealt shadow damage over time. Add on Scourge that says when your target is affected by shadow damage over time, you do another 10% damage to it. Add on Abyssal. Abyssal says, wait, is Abyssal here? Add on Abyssal. Abyssal says that you do 10% additional non-physical damage. That's shadow damage, baby. And you continue to get to enjoy the benefits of everything that multiplies overpower damage, consuming corpses for the additional multipliers here. Additional overpower damage from Bloodbath. You're picking up blood orbs continuously, so you get another 1.3 multiplier from Blood Begets Blood. And then the Desecration Glyph itself. Even just using the Desecration Glyph, which gives you a 20% damage multiplier for shadow damage whenever you're standing on desecrated ground, means that if we looked at nothing else, the aspect of Ultimate Shadow activates the entirety of our skill tree and gives us a 1.2 multiplier, ignoring anything else that I just pointed out to you. Then, because we're doing blood damage, we get to scale blood overpower damage, but because the ultimate skill is actually doing damage itself now, we're not dealing with the shadow damage over time on the ground, all of a sudden, ultimate damage, an additive damage that's been added in one of the tempers that rivals critical strike damage and overpower damage, is available for all of your gear and significantly easier to hit on, considering we have 100% crit chance, 100% overpower application, and it's an ultimate skill. So you can hit 3 out of 4 of the options in that temper manual, and none of them are considered bricks. Now, I have a bunch of issues with the fact that blood overpower damage isn't stronger than regular overpower damage, and ultimate skill damage is somehow equivalent or just as niche as crit and overpower, but that's feedback that I'm going to be giving to the developers. All in all, this is a build that has some easy pieces of unique gear to be able to shore up some of its issues, but once you actually get your hands on more perfect or greater affix or multiple crit chances, you can add on even more damage to the kit and remove some of these unique items to regain the benefits of other passives, as well as more aspects. Well, I have the build planner down below. That's why I'm not going to go over every single skill choice, every single Paragon choice. I just want to go over the gear that I'm currently using in this kind of go-between or stopgap version of the build, because I just don't have everything on the PTR right now. But I think that this will also help to kind of shed some light on things that you can do as a player right now across the majority of your builds if you're looking to create something functional but don't have the gear to support it. A lot of this boils down to Lokran's Talisman. Lokran's Talisman is an amazingly new, powerful piece of gear, and if you haven't seen my video that I posted yesterday or today, depending on when you watch this, what it basically does is be a strictly stronger Grasping Veins with 100% uptime and basically no downsides. It is an amulet that's going to give you attack speed, which is generally good on most builds. It's going to give you a huge amount of additive crit damage, which if you're trying to crit cap is obviously a very good starting place. It's going to give you all stats to make reaching Paragon nodes easier, but in addition to that, not only giving us intelligence for res and damage, but also strength for some armor, willpower for some essence generation, and then more dexterity for some crit chance. And then it's going to add on a huge amount of maximum resource. The reason why you're going to need that is because you need as much of it as you possibly get your hands on to max out the benefit of the amulet. The amulet, for every 1 essence that you have over base, so everything that you have over 100, is going to add as a multiplier whenever you crit. So right now I have 208 essence. That means that this amulet has a 108% multiplier whenever I crit, or a 2.08 multi. That's pretty big for an amulet. To be able to empower this, we need to put as much maximum resource onto our gear as possible. So that means that we're going to be using an offhand with more maximum resource and a helmet with more maximum resource. Add on to that the fact that the amulet gives you a ton by itself, and you can drink the resource reduction and bonus resource potion, and that's how you can very easily get up to this amount without sacrificing any weird gear options here. For the rest of the gear, you just want to be maxing out as much cooldown reduction as possible so that whenever you cast Blood Wave, you'll notice that it has a 32-second cooldown as opposed to the base 50. And then after we cast it out and pick up all 9 blood orbs, the total reduction here is not going to quite reach uptime. We have a couple seconds missing, but that's where Flicker Step comes in to be able to literally decrease that specific gap. Not only that, but you can actually activate this multiple times per blood wave rotation, allowing you to get better uptime on bosses as well as tankier packs, and to be able to move through huge packs of monsters and basically leave blood orbs around just in case you need them later to be able to reduce cooldown on your next cast. The other biggest increase or overall quality of life here is definitely going to be the Cursed Aura aspect. This is going to automatically apply both your Decrepify and Iron Maiden to all targets within its range, and then the curses will also spread. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what's happening with the spread of the curses, I don't think that that's particularly relevant, since the typical gameplay style here is to Blood Wave, Blood Mist through, applying your curse to everything, and then when you come out the other side, making sure to Grasping Veins so that everything is in a big pack. Go ahead and hit it with the dash and then Blood Wave through again. You can obviously proactively cast Decrepify in case you're going to be engaging onto a pack of monsters that is far away, and you want to proactively Blood Wave into them to be able to apply a bunch of crowd control and knockback to keep yourself safe. And then you're going to just generally be eating corpses whenever you can to maintain uptime on our multipliers there. And then I'm including Bone Prison. Bone Prison is a little bit of an interesting application here, most notably because we are using Corpse Tendrils to apply Blood Orbs so that we can even further increase the efficiency of our engine. And what this basically means is that even though we have Apply Vulnerable on one of our rings, lucky hit chance on the build isn't particularly large. So Bone Prison allows us to proactively apply a huge amount of vulnerable length so that on bosses, most notably, we're gaining the total benefits of that multiplier. For the rest of the gear, just making sure that your armor capped, res capped, have as much maximum life as you can possibly fit onto it. Hardened Bones for more damage reduction. We're going to be going with Tidal for Blood Wave casts 3 times. The cool part about this is that the first Blood Wave will hit, overpowering the target, which will then activate your Dominate glyph, giving you a multiplier against targets who have been overpowered. So the second Blood Wave does basically the same amount of damage as the first Blood Wave. And that means that your third Blood Wave is basically the first one to be negatively impacted by the damage reduction here. In a perfect world, you end up putting this onto your amulet for the biggest damage multiplier that you can get. But when we're still using Locrins, which I'm not even necessarily sure like you do want to drop in the late game, it's kind of hard to say, just because the multi from this is absolutely ludicrous. But you would be able to put up there for even more damage. The addition of Blood Moon Breaches finally allows us to benefit from this amazingly powerful 2x multiplier against cursed targets when we overpower, whereas previously on the build, since our ultimate skill didn't actually do damage, just the damage over time did, we basically couldn't use this thing. Big DR, big maximum life, more amplified damage, and again, a 2x multiplier whenever a target is cursed. Like I said, Flicker Step here, we are going to be using maces. Since maces have overpower damage on them, we want even more overpower damage, as much as we can possibly get. And then you'll notice that I have chance for Blight projectiles to cast twice. I was using Blight on this build originally, and I do think that's just like a pretty decent 1.2 multi. It also helps to be able to proc the vulnerable here, so you don't necessarily have to rely on Bone Prison. But there's kind of absolutely nothing to put onto this weapon temper. So if you are using the Bone Prison version, use Elemental Surge, I guess? The devs need to add a Blood Wave temper, first and foremost, but weapon tempers that actually help blood skills. Sacrificial aspect here is going to further boost all of our Book of the Dead sacrifices. It is a massive, massive multi for shadow damage, critable builds, since you get to get the bonus of all 3 sacrifices here. So I think this one aspect is something like a 41% damage multiplier when all is said and done. Obviously, Ultimate Shadow, like I said, the focus is obviously great since you can get that cooldown reduction and crit chance and maximum resource, which is what we're ideally looking for. You notice that this is actually my Bone Spirit offhand. I just noticed that the stats on this were better than the one that I had tempered for blood damage, and since we have so much additive damage through Overpower, it kind of doesn't matter that this is absolutely nothing to do with the build at all. I actually find that kind of funny. Obviously Fast Blood, so we can reduce the cooldown even further. You want more crit chance, a chance to apply vulnerable, and then as much ultimate cooldown as you can possibly get here. And then the same thing for the next ring, but again, we're using the damned aspect. What do I think about the build? How would I tier out the build? Because quite honestly, it's not the most impressive thing on the planet. It's pretty cool to see like 2 or 3 150 or 100 million overpower crits coming out of Blood Wave, something you've never been able to do in the past. But ultimately, this is not necessarily like quote unquote competing with top tier builds right now. I would call this somewhere around the low C tier, just because it's a little bit janky and it doesn't have a ton of mobility. But what it is a fully functional build that can absolutely farm tier 100 pit. And it's just kind of fun as all hell. It is one of the more interesting things that I've done on a build, and I've been waiting to be able to actually overpower on this thing because it's basically had this little like latent seedling of possibility, and it was just the fact that it did absolutely crap damage, and now at the very least the base damage scale is high enough for you to see good damage output. Now keep in mind too, there's a helmet that's called the Something of Lucian, which gives you a 2.25 multiplier, but it increases your resource costs. This build doesn't have resource costs other than Decrepify. So it would basically be a 2.25 total multiplier of our damage on the build, and you just slot that bad boy on. The cool part about it is it also has maximum resource, so it absolutely works with Locrins as well. And then the only issue is that you would have slightly less cooldown reduction, but you could just manage that through Flicker Step. So this build should be doing, with that helmet on, another 2.25, so somewhere around the realm of like 250 to 300 million per blood wave, and you hit it with 3 blood waves, so basically somewhere around like 300 mil, let's call it 250, 550, and then just drop that down, call it like 700 million damage on the top end when we're talking about like greater affix and masterwork crits in the Helm of Lucian in a perfect world scenario. And 700 million damage over 3 seconds, so about 233 million DPS, is more than enough to be pushing like tier 110 or tier 120 as it stands currently. And I'm pretty excited to see what this build looks like on the top end of it. I still think it's going to range somewhere around C tier because every build's going to be able to use the Helm of Lucian, but it's definitely very interesting. It's something that you should probably try out during the PTR, just so you don't feel bad in case you don't like it. But if you've been looking for an incredibly unique gameplay experience, this is what I would recommend trying. Let me know down in the comments what you think, what you've been trying out, what types of permutations of this you've tried yourself, because I know I'm not the only person looking forward to this build. It's kind of been in the waiting for a long time, and a lot of people are hopefully going to be theory crafting it. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you liked what you saw, and toss a like onto the video. It helps me out a ton. Thank you very much for watching this video. I truly hope that it helps. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Do I want the Rakanoth? Yes, Yama. I will take the Rakanoth. I appreciate you. Are we already friends? Excuse me? Unholy Tether? Yeah, I want to try that out too. I just don't know like what builds can afford to use mobility aspects. Which is kind of the issue. You're coming? Well, I'm coming over there. It's in my Discord, ! Discord crazy. There's a build planner there. Thank you. All right, so we'll have to test this. But right now we need to test just the dumbest thing. What up, Eric? We have to try the dumbest thing. We have to try the dumbest thing in the world. We have to try. We have to try. It's the dumbest thing in the world. We have to try. Have to try. The dumbest thing in the world. We have to try. Okay. Okay. Two goats left, and I see two of them kissing and hugging on stage. I love them to death. And in 8 bars, I'll explain that phrase. Ain't nobody can tell me. I ain't talking on no silly. You know I got language barriers. Rackonauts is not next, no. It's not Bone Prison time yet. It's the stupidest shit ever time. It's time to do the stupidest shit on the planet. Oh, we should also test out Sever. Wait, what's it called? Oh, it's a mobility aspect. What is the thing? What's the... Shade Mist. Shade Mist. Iridium in Crazy Caffeine and Jangles, Tommy Mills, Preto Krika, Wizard Dave, Great White Hype, Alexander Mack, Silver Fox, Zach Mayfield, Dangerous Pig. Thank you for the follows. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for liking on the video. If you haven't already, go ahead and do that. It would mean the world to me. It's time to do the dumbest thing you've ever seen. No, you don't need points and skills. Although you do need points and skills to modify it with like Abhorrent Decrepify. You think how Overpower works will be the only way for Bloodlance to be relevant? Until they give it some way to scale off of non-overpower damage? Yes. So here's a major problem. So here's the problem with that. That is Bone Prison being a minion via Shade Mist. Now you'll notice that it's proccing Lucky Hit chance at a very high rate. If you pay attention there. I have 93.8 Lucky Hit chance bonus, as well as 13 Shadow Lucky Hit chance. Wow, that one sucked. What was up with that? Now the other issue. Oh, here's an interesting thing. It's not triggering Hued Flesh. But it is triggering. Why isn't it triggering Hued Flesh? It's also applying freeze, which is fun. What's dazing it? Oh, it's triggering concussive strikes. Wow, and it still doesn't trigger that often, which is like hilarious. Yes, Bone Prison with the splinters, but those are splinters triggering Lucky Hit Chance, which they should be. Now the funny part is that it's also not significantly increasing the effectiveness of Decrepify. I dare say it's actually not even triggering Decrepify. Their base attacks can. Now if I put on something like this. If I were to put on Blighted. Just so you can see how quickly it's happening. So they're triggering Shadow Blight. Why is my Shadow Mages capped? Oh, because there's now less of them. Hold on, I'm an idiot. So, this is a problem. Now the wild part is that it's not triggering Hued Flesh. How is it not triggering Hued Flesh? Where are the overpowers? Well, minions only overpower 3% of the time. Character sheet, don't read the crit chance at all. It does not, Koger. Oh, also, it says that it's scaling damage, that it's non-scaling damage, but it does scale. So that's cool. Or, rather, I rescind my statement. Never mind that. So, the part that's kind of rough is that it doesn't trigger Decrepify. Does it trigger Crippling Darkness? No, because it's not a darkness skill. So I think it's just working with lucky hit effects on gear. Like how quickly they reduce. Hold on. Okay. I have Doombringer on. No, so for everybody kind of asking questions about lucky hit chance, for a very long time, we thought that the verbiage of a lucky hit chance modified how the lucky hit chance behavior worked. So you notice that Huge Flesh says your damage. You'll notice that Decrepify says enemies hit. And you'll see that Crippling Darkness says darkness skills. Because these three things all worked differently in the past based off of things that were triggering it, we were solidly positive that the verbiage mattered. Now, in the case of Crippling Darkness, the verbiage does matter. But it turns out that nothing in the game is supposed to trigger lucky hit chance unless it is a skill with a lucky hit chance coefficient. Nothing is supposed to. If something currently triggers lucky hit chance and it's not a skill with a lucky hit chance coefficient, that is a bug. It actually does it. It has nothing to do with this saying your damage. It has nothing to do with this saying enemies hit. It actually has nothing to do with that. It is only supposed to be skills with lucky hit chance coefficients that are able to trigger them. On top of that, the special effects from unique items like Ebon Piercer bolts or Deathless Visage leaving behind orbs, or even Kruor's Embrace like mini novas, those aren't supposed to trigger lucky hit chance because they aren't actually skills with lucky hit chance coefficients. They're not supposed to. It's all bugs. It's bugs all the way down. This is not my guess. This is per the developers. And those things will like slowly over time get worked out. So when we're investigating bugs, understanding how that bug is very specifically working with these systems, we'll see whether or not whatever fixes are in place for the code for these individual things, whether or not it got like properly added. But it's not. Also, this is an aspect from me. Your aspect is always your damage. This is my damage. The thing is, it's not a skill. Now, the funny part, though, is that they clearly learned. This effect is not triggering lucky hit for your skills. What they didn't include is its ability to trigger lucky hit of effects of items. I got a new job circumcising elephants at the zoo. The pay isn't great, but the tips are huge. Yes, Death Speakers works with Bone Prison. Why would anyone use Ebon Piercer if it has 0% lucky hit chance? Because it does 15 times Blight's damage per target. It turns out the damage of Ebon Piercer is a very large number. But Ebon Piercer does not proc lucky hit chance, except it has a bugged interaction very specifically with Hued Flesh. But go put on Ebon Piercer, go put on any lucky hit chance effect in the game, and only hit the target with just the bolts and not with the blight, and you'll never trigger a lucky hit chance except for Hued Flesh. Is Minion Necro still viable? Sure is. It just lost one of its multipliers. Now, okay. Does X-Files maybe work differently? Nope. None of them work differently. They all work the exact same. Only skills can trigger X-Files, except this thing is currently broken. There is no thing that is any lucky hit chance is intentionally and by design working in a different lucky hit way than anything else. If it does, it is a bug. I don't know why I ate this vitamin right before I wanted to record a video. Sometimes, y'all, I stupefy myself. Hear me. Does X-Files scale with additive damage? Yep. All additive damage works the same for all things. Thank you for the follows. We're going to record a quick video. I got a very interesting ping from Sirach today, who had gotten a very interesting video from Sir K, because they had been talking about a very cool new aspect which had been added to the game by the name of Shade Mist. Shade Mist says that your minions will now deal a shadow damage over time kind of mini aura around them, and that damage will continue on even after they move away from them. The cool part about this is that it obviously has amazing implications for things like an Infinimus build that was looking to stack Shadow Blight procs as fast as possible. Having a ton of minions around a target all proccing Shadow Blight for you very quickly seems to be able to put out a good amount of damage. I'm going to be trying an Infiniminion build very shortly. But to be able to understand this thing, obviously we had to go and test it. And the video that they sent to me included a very interesting interaction. Let me go ahead and cast Bone Prison, which counts as 6 minions standing around the target, and let's see if anything interesting happens to this target. So this is what happens. So this is Bone Prison, just around the target normally. It applies vulnerable, it sits there for a little bit of time, doesn't do anything particularly noticeable. That's what you kind of expect Bone Prison to do. They removed all of the weird lucky hit chance shenanigans with like Mendel's Ring from Bone Prison a long time ago. Now, what happens if I put this aspect on that's going to make it so each section of them is going to apply a shadow damage over time effect? Well, let's see. That's weird. That shouldn't happen. You know how I tell you all the time that minions don't have lucky hit chance? And that if a lucky hit chance effect is ever proccing for them, it's a bug? Well, welcome to the new bug, where I am happy to say the developers have learned from their previous mistakes. This effect doesn't trigger lucky hit. This effect does not trigger huge flesh lucky hit. It's not going to generate corpses for you. This effect doesn't trigger abhorrent decrepify. It's not going to vastly reduce cooldowns. Now, while it's not a darkness skill, it also doesn't trigger things like crippling darkness to be able to apply a stun in a huge amount of damage. It's not a blood skill, so it's obviously not going to lucky hit drain vitality. But then what are all of these various explosions and stun effects and massive procs that are happening again and again and again? Those are item-based lucky hit effects. Those are things like X-Falls Ring, and Doombringer, and Concussive Strikes. The developers have learned from their mistakes in the past. This thing is not triggering lucky hit skills. What I think that they missed in their application or in their coding of this effect is to also stop it from proccing various lucky hit abilities across your gear. And the funny part about it is because it's a brand new damage effect in the game, it obviously has a 100% lucky hit chance coefficient, which we can actually buff even further. So I currently have a 93.7 lucky hit chance bonus. I also have an additional 13.6% lucky hit chance bonus through shadow effects. And it also gets kind of crazy when you add a bunch of minions to the mix. I'm gonna get all of your minions on top of something, and then you also got your bone prison going the entire time. You'll notice that we are triggering things at like pretty ridiculous rates with multiple overlapping explosive procs, the application very quickly of things like concussive strikes for daze effect and damage multipliers there. And then you'll also notice just very quickly, if you want to take a look at it, our blighted aspect and our shadow blight procs very, very fast. That was like about a second for just our minions' shadow damage alone to be able to proc this ability. Now, what does this mean for builds? Well, it's definitely a bug. They should not be working in this way, absolutely not. But like I said, it's not triggering anything from our skills. It's only triggering lucky hit chance effects from our gear. So again, most notably because this is shadow damage over time, you can use X-Falls, which already has a massive chance to be able to proc. This basically means that it's proccing roughly 50% of the time per, I believe, individual minion's application of shadow damage. That's why we're getting so many of these purple explosions here. The other interesting things, again, like it can trigger Doombringer. I actually don't think that Doombringer will make its way onto this build because I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to want just as many aspects that are scaling shadow damage and then blights damage, and that's how we're going to get back to the good old days of Infinimist with X-Falls and then decay aspect. But things like concussive strikes here actually do apply a pretty massive amount of stagger very quickly to the target, something that is obviously like incredibly valuable for the build. And if I could get my mages to move back into range over here, well, they're just not going to do it. But them alone just applying these effects to the target very quickly, and then ourselves being able to trigger things like Grasping Veins and then also Slow from Decrepify is going to stagger bosses incredibly fast. And this is ignoring all of the overlapping actual lucky hit chance effects that we ourselves could be applying with our build. And I do believe that with this many instances of overlapping lucky hit chance effects, at least until they fix this, we might be able to see a return to the glory days of Infinimist. Obviously, this should also have applications elsewhere, but I definitely think that that is like the easiest place to assume that you'll be able to benefit the most from how this aspect is working. I can't really think of anything else to do with it. Okay. So I just want to give a shout out to both Sirach and Sir K, who actually brought this to my attention. Obviously I had to go out and test it myself just to see like what the applications were and to figure out whether or not this is a bug, and it absolutely is a bug. If you're ever curious about whether or not something's a bug with lucky hit chance, understand that at a base level, only skills which have a lucky hit chance coefficient are meant to trigger lucky hit chance. And that's why, again, most notably, this isn't triggering anything in our skill tree, because they did catch that, they made it and coded it properly so that it wouldn't trigger these various effects. But I think they just missed things like X Falls, again, like Doombringer, Azure Wrath, and then Concussive Strikes from the equation, and this will almost certainly be fixed. At the very least, I am going to be reporting it as a bug, because oddly enough, it ain't supposed to be doing this. But let's go ahead and say, nope, they think this should be in the game. This absolutely makes it into Season 5. Can you think of any other applications here? Obviously, there's also like the Elemental Surge Temper on my gear here that's adding on another chance to be able to proc shadow damage, which is going to help a little bit here. But what do you think we can actually do with this? Can you consider anything? Maybe most notably, like, is there anything else that you consider that we could possibly use with this thing? Obviously it has like really cool applications for X-Falls, but can it go even further? I'd love to hear from you down below. Now that this gets the wheels in your head turning, I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It would help me out a bunch. Leave a like on the video as well. That is massive for me. Thank you so much to everybody who does that every single time. I super appreciate it. And as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that it helps you out to enjoy your PTR testing, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. This is big. This is big, Bone Prison bug feels. What is this called? Shade Mist bug. Shade Mist bug. Put my bug here. Download that. Boop, 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 boop. Bugs. Shade Mist aspect carries a 100% lucky hit chance coefficient for non-skill based lucky hit chance procs. For example, Doombringer, Elemental Surge Temper, X Falls. Okay. Return of Infinimist. Yeah, this, even without this lucky hit chance nonsense, this is how I was thinking about empowering Infinimist. Like Aphotic, Shadow, Skellies, maybe some minion attack speed, and then this and Shadow Blight procs. Obviously X Falls too, but like mostly that. Mac, just got back into D4 again, came across your videos, appreciate everything you're doing. Finally, question is, what builds are viable for Necro and hitting at least tier 60 hurt it's harder? Season 5 pit for clarification. I don't think I can give you a conclusive list of builds that are going to perform at various levels in Season 5, because we don't really know what the pit's going to look like, because right now we're dealing with a bugged version of the pit. But every single Necromancer build is viable for tier 100 pit currently in Season 4. Can you test how minions move with the Sever Dash? I now need to look at the Sever Dash, yeah. You wish that something like this would stay in the game? I think that they can add stuff like this to the game without it having to be bugged interactions. Oh, that's trash. Am I immune to damage the whole time? Okay, so here we are. On controller, is it absolutely garbage? It's going to be. Actually pretty good. Actually pretty proud of them. Oh, it's because I only have a target over there. Hold on.